Along with first editions, illustrated books have always been heavily collected. Why? Maybe because their illustrations are pretty. Maybe because their illustrations are fascinating to study, to examine, to see how they aid comprehension, or sometimes how they take over comprehension. The field is so vast that we'll restrict ourselves to several forms of 20th century illustrated books, including the woodcut, the wood engraving, the etching, the linoleum cut, the French version of silkscreen called Pochoir, the lithograph, of course, and most heavily collected are 20th century photographically illustrated books. This is a book illustrated with woodcuts. It's André Derain's Pantagruel after Rabelais, done in 1943. It has a charming, simple quality to the illustrations, mainly because historically the woodcuts could not be cut too finely or they would break in the press. The woodcut is produced by elimination, by cutting away everything except the line or the shapes to be printed on the wood. It's a relief process. They're produced by inking a raised surface against which a piece of paper is pressed, either manually or by running it through the press to create an image on the paper. Here is a close-up of one of the woodcut illustrations, and so far as you can see it in a digital reproduction or digital copy, Derain, instead of cutting a separate block for each color, which is the usual practice, he cut a white line on each block to separate the color areas. The blocks were then inked in several colors and printed on dampened paper. The paper was then printed by Roger Le Courrier over a period of 2 years. Then there's the book illustrated with the linoleum cut, or lino cut, a very simple material to use. Linoleum was developed in the mid-19th century, and in the 20th century it's been used successfully by Matisse, Picasso, and here this is the title page for the Grabhorn Press edition of Anthony and Cleopatra with lino cuts by Mary Grabhorn's. You probably don't remember doing linoleum cuts when you were children in kindergarten or first grade, but most of us did. It's a very simple form of printing where linoleum is used as a printing surface. It's no longer used as flooring. And we use gouges and knives to cut a design into a linoleum, and then it's very easy to print with a simple hand press where you screw down the top of the press to apply pressure, or use a lever, or you can even do it by rubbing the paper against an ink block with a spoon, rolling pin, or baren. This beautiful little jewel of a book, the pen above it gives it a sense of scale, prints poetry by Kenneth White and original etchings worked with aquatints by the Bostonian artist Anne Walker. The delicacy and subtlety of the etching gets lost pretty much in a digital version. That's why you have to actually hold these things in your hand to see the three-dimensional qualities. Etching is a very old form of printing from the Renaissance. Aquatint is early 19th century, late 18th century development. And in the 20th century, it's been used by some of the greatest artists, all the way from Picasso down to the present day. The etching process is done by taking a metal plate, usually copper, zinc, or steel, covering it with a waxy or acrylic surface called a ground, and then drawing through the ground with a pointed etching needle. The exposed metal lines in the plate are then etched by dipping it into a bath of acid. The acid bites into the exposed metal, leaving behind lines in the plate. If you can see the lines of the birch trees, that's a pure etching. The aquatint process complicates the simplicity of the pure etching by adding tone. Where the etching technique uses a needle to make lines, aquatint uses a powdered rosin which is acid resistant. The rosin is applied in a light dusting by a fan, then it's cooked until it sets on the plate. At that time, the rosin can be burnished or scratched out to affect its tonal qualities, as you see in the surroundings of the lines of the tree. Another popular form of illustrated book is the silkscreen, or the Pochoir, P-O-C-H-O-I-R book, as it's known in France. This is a book done in 1931, edited by Raymond Cognat, on the designs of the artist and set designer Simon Lissim. Now, the process has been used most frequently to accelerate the hand coloring of line drawings printed on paper. And it was very popular from the end of the 19th century as an economical way of coloring artists' drawings that were converted into line blocks. Silkscreen is a method of allowing a painted design to be applied to almost any surface by rubbing, brushing, or spraying ink, dye, or paint through holes cut in a thin sheet of moisture-proof material. If you look very carefully at this close-up of the guy's nose, lips, and the blue on his epaulets, you'll see how deep and saturated those colors are. You actually have to hold the book in your hand and then rub your fingers across the color, and they're raised a little bit because they're applied so heavily. You'll certainly see Pochoir at work then.